I was going to say good morning, but now that we are past that time, so good afternoon, everyone. Uh, if the next decade, and what we've been discussing at this forum is the next decade is going to be India's decade in tech. And if we need to make that a reality, we need, all the day yesterday we were talking about it, we need more innovation. We need more open mindedness in players. And we need more players to come together. It is the collaboration between different partners, different ecosystem partners that will create value. However, we've all been used to the old idea of stitching partnerships. And the challenge before the tech industry today is how do you set up, how do you manage these ecosystems different than how traditional partnerships used to work? And how do you then use these ecosystems to create a competitive advantage for yourself as a market player? So, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to discuss three things. First, what is the context of the ecosystems? Where have they come so far? But more importantly, what is the need of the hour today? Second is how do you manage an ecosystem well? And third, and most importantly, what can we as market participants do to create and nurture ecosystems? What can India do better in ecosystems? And with that, let me open it up with you, Venkat. In your mind, what is the context of ecosystems? How have they evolved? What have been some of the turning points in our journey so far?
Thank you, Sumit, and happy to be here. Thank you, nasscom, for doing this in-person meet. It always feels nice. It always feels nice seeing all of you. Uh, to answer that question, Sumit, I will probably have to take you a little bit down memory lane if everybody is comfortable. And I like to also borrow a terminology that is generally used in the startup world, which is called pivot, right? I'm sure all of you are aware of that. So actually, the IT industry started off with a pivot, right? A lot of focus were there. If you read the book Against All Odds by Chris, who's one of the co-authors of the book, in the early 80s, is when we started that pivot from hardware to software, correct? And things were difficult in their own ways, simple if you look at it now, and stuffs like that, right? And most of the leaders that you see in the CEOs and CXOs that you see probably joined the industry around that time, correct? The second pivot, obviously, that was an era where you had the ecosystem probably didn't make a lot of sense. You just had a client, you used to code, you used to ship it, that was it, right? The second pivot that I call is the Y2K era, right? And that's where I joined the mainstream, if I can personalize it. And when I joined the industry, there were a lot of talks saying, hey, Y2K will come. After that, there will be anything, right? I mean, why did you join? So, but obviously Y2K changed a lot of perceptions. The whole industry pivoted to a totally different set of offerings, correct? We started doing a lot of, internet came in, we had a lot of client server projects, a lot of application development, outsourcing, name you. So that was a big pivot that happened, right? If that was not done, then the entire opportunity would have gone a waste. But what we did before that, led up to it. So that was a very interesting time. We had obviously partners, the ecosystem began to take place in that, from that perspective. Then I would say it went on for another 20 years, right? Financial crisis happened. There was a lot of talks. I would call them mini pivots. I wouldn't call them major pivots. It was more an evolution than revolution. Digital engineering happened after that. Fintechs came in, startups came in after the financial crisis, and stuffs like that, right? There was also a lot of talk that the industry is being left behind and they're not able to scale up to digital talent and all of that. And we know how that played out now, right? If all of you remember all the conversations in the early 2012 and 2013s, correct? But then the ecosystem really grew at that point of time, correct? It really started becoming, because digital engineering came, you had to work with multiple stakeholders, you had to work with multiple players in that cloud first, all of that, hyperscalers, all of these came in. What we are seeing now is a very different pivot that I feel I would call it the third pivot, right? Every pivot is 20 years if you see the logical conclusion. This pivot, so far the pivots that you have seen were linear in nature. They were incremental. Every year you made some changes, correct? This pivot that is going to do is non-linear, literally in the sense that it is exponential, as Peter mentioned to in the morning, correct? The rate of change is only going to go up manifold times as we speak. And the role of ecosystem is even more important now because I don't think we can do everything ourselves, right? Whether be it, and if you, let's say if you want to do a project in aeronautics, if you want to do a project in 5G, you have different kinds. You have ecosystem. nasscom is one ecosystem you have to work with. You have to work with governments. A project currently today that you have to do is even more complex than what it would be in future, correct? And if one has to play the game and one has to succeed in the decade, one has to have a totally different view of not just developing but also ecosystems.
Thank you. Let me turn to you, Satish. Taking off from what Venkat was saying, right? The ecosystems are changing. Even talent is becoming an ecosystem in itself. What do you think are the catalysts of managing an ecosystem today? What kind of ecosystems are you seeing? What roles are orchestrators like yourself playing in the ecosystems?
Yeah. So I'll start with talking about business before I talk about us as a community. If you look at how ecosystems have changed, the reason for creation of an ecosystem in the past was to plug your gap and to make your value chain complete. That is how the original closed loop ecosystems or tightly coupled ecosystems were created historically. Today, this game has been completely disrupted. The era of new ecosystems are, how do I disrupt? How do I create new value chains? How do I create new business models? And the reason for, or the catalyst for creation of ecosystem has shifted from completing you to disrupting, in the market. And it's also manifesting who's your competition. In the past, the competition used to be your competitor. Today, your competition is the ecosystem. One of the big retailers had to compete with another big retailer. They were not competing against the competitor, they were competing with the ecosystem, which is why they built a marketplace as a capability, because they wanted to compete with them. So now the pivot has changed completely to create new value, innovation, disruption, and be really leading edge. So there are many examples like this. One of the beverage companies that we work with, globally, during the pandemic, they couldn't deliver the beverage at home. So they partnered with a logistics player to deliver the beverage to home. Then they figured out the customers are missing the experience. So they opened up the playlist on the digital app that they already have. So now they can not only deliver the beverage at home, but they can also unleash the same experience in store. Then they went even further. They created new value chains. They became a platform. They allowed other food companies to bundle their offerings with these guys. And as they did all of that in those 2 or 3 years, it's not only just survival, they completely disrupted. They became a platform. They built a $1.5 billion loyalty program, which was unprecedented for somebody like that. So here's the classic example of somebody who just went and completely disrupted their business model. They actually became a much more formidable competitor. So the catalyst for all of this is innovation and disruption.
Thank you. Let me be provocative for a little bit. Let's start with the statement that we in India, especially in the Indian tech industry, are not doing enough to work within ecosystems, to set up and to work within ecosystems. I could be wrong, but that's the hypothesis. We are consultants. We start with hypothesis. So let me throw the challenge at both of you. And I'll start with you, Satish. Are we doing enough in the Indian tech industry to leverage ecosystems? And for our participants here, what are those 3 learnings that they can take back from how do you manage and work in ecosystems? If all of them were to go back to their respective organizations, what learnings can they take back?
Yeah, I think first we should pat ourselves on the back collectively as a community. I think we've done extremely well over last 2 to 3 decades in terms of leveraging the power of the ecosystem and bringing the collective capability together as harnessed by NASSCOM and our collaborations across the industry. I think we have done a great job. But today where we are, there are 3 things in my mind that we need to be able to do. Number one, I think we are not only good at solving the problem, we also need to get very good at framing the problem. So that means we need to get very good at working with our clients to frame the problem, experiment, and do a fast fail, be a garage for hire so that we are actually able to establish the proof of the value. And then from there, work with ecosystem of not only tech OEMs, the startup ecosystem. I was really excited about what I heard about the fluid AI story that they showcased yesterday. Bring capabilities like this very seamlessly as you experiment and explore. And then lastly, we are not just a tech orchestrator. We have to realize that for the kind of solution that we are building, we have to be very adept at being not only a digital orchestrator, but going beyond our industries. Just imagine if you are actually solving the energy transition problem. You should be an orchestrator of not only digital, but also of services and capabilities beyond our industry. And we're starting to see deals like this in our industry. So I think the opportunity is great. The kind of ecosystem that we dealt with is not just only tech, it is going beyond tech into areas that we have not bundled together as we solve and bring everything together. So I'm very excited about the opportunity.
Thank you. So frame the problem well, go beyond the obvious, and solve the problem that your clients have. I turn it over to you, Venkat.
Thank you. I'll chime with Satish here. So the Indian IT industry, having been here for almost 25 years, is resilient by habit. Okay, we have seen a lot of changes in the last 30, 40 years. And I would like to throw the same thing back, you gave a hypothesis. I think the problem also starts from somewhere, if you look at how the client is spending and what it is spending on, right? A lot of management stuff tells us focus on the core, not on the context, correct? And in that process, a lot of the fact we are missing out on a big opportunity, correct? It's often said, right? Focus on the core, context, you should allow other things to happen. But guess what? When you're looking for an ecosystem, maybe some of the context is your core,
Right.
correct? Something that you never thought you will do 10 years back, you probably have to do it now, right? And I like to give the analogy, if let's say the client is spending $100 on a particular project, right? So far, you've been happy taking $20 out of it, correct? You were doing a lot of the app build out, infra, this, that. But there are a lot of stuff, the $80 that is there, which probably you thought were the context, correct, can now become the core if you manage the ecosystems properly. And the winners of tomorrow, pretty much, are going to be the people who are going to focus on that, right? Let me give you a small analogy on that, which I always have kept in mind, right? We all have program managers and all of that, right? When you look at an ecosystem, I'm being a film buff myself, right? When a movie is made, think of a client making a movie, right? You have production managers. What do? They deal with a whole bunch of people across the ecosystem, right from writers, right from songwriters, right from music, everything, right? You are happy doing script writing and dialogues and you think you have generated a lot of value for the client, but actually, you know what? It's a full package, correct? So the future belongs to companies that can identify that and take a call and make sure that they are able to do that. So in future, right, we also need to reorient the talent in that particular way, right? As I said, millennials are the new managers, correct, of the Gen Z, right? They are collaborative by nature. They like to partner with people. They like to work together and all of that. You need to leverage that. And also, you need to get a different set of talent into the organization, correct? Right now, we take mechanical engineers from different institutes and make them do Python coding, correct? That should change, correct? You need to take mechanical engineers who can work on Industry 4.0. That's when the power of the ecosystem will come, right? You take electrical engineers and make them work on their particular area, because if you have to capture the bigger pie, you need to look at it at a holistic level.
Fantastic. So I'm taking away a few learnings. The role of the ecosystem is changing, and you said it's a third pivot that we have. Second, the value that people can create within an ecosystem is expanding. So how do you go from the $20 to the $80, and the context is becoming core. And we all in this room and those who are not in this room have to adapt ourselves and our companies to take advantage of these ecosystems, be it in terms of the companies that we partner with. Today, there's no need to just partner with tech companies. You can partner with companies across domains to actually provide a solution. We may have time for a couple of audience questions, and if there are any, would like to open it up.
Mike
Is there a mic, guys?
or else I can hear. We can.
Yeah, you can hear, but I don't know everyone else will hear or not.
We'll repeat it.
Yeah, okay, so my question, by the way, I am Krishnakant, founder and CTO of Bookmatic Private Limited, it's a fintech company. So I had two questions, one from the technology point of view. We were talking about disruptions. Yeah, thank you. So we were talking about disruptions when I just entered the room, and of course, startups, most of the startups are doing what they're actually doing the disruption. So my question, when we want to make the ecosystem participate, there is a big mass of digitally underserved community, particularly in India. And which do you think is the entry point for this digitally underserved community to become a part of the ecosystem? Because now it's not just about technology developers, So that's one question. The other question is, so nowadays with all, things going on the microservices, because in the olden days there would be huge ERPs like SAP, and now people just want to have microservices, assemble them together and create a package. So when we talk about experience as a very big disrupting factor, do you think that ecosystems would be leveraging multi-sensual experiences, especially when we don't know when the next lockdown might just come, or even if it doesn't come, if it is all about experiences? Because now time is not a factor, because couriers came, then Zepto and Blinkit came. Now they say they have reduced the time. So time is no more a big factor.
Thank you.
But do you think multi-sensual, experiences is going to be the next disruption, which would actually help leverage the power of the ecosystem? Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Just to sort of be efficient on time, maybe one of you can
I'll take the first part, which is, yes, how can we unleash the power of innovation? I think in India, if you look at one of the unique advantages we have had is we have democratized innovation by creating India Stack and population scale platforms. It is opening new possibilities for new innovation, for new offerings, which was never possible. I'll give you a simple example. With GST, it's not just a formalization of economy to go up from 50% to 80%. It's also that digitization of commerce. Now, SMB players can have access to credit because there's digitization of the commerce. So you have democratized availability of capital. So there, of course, there is a big innovation. Similarly, with all this digital ecosystem that we are creating, there is so much data that is being created. It becomes a playground for new innovation. So I think that at least in India, the innovations, the India Stack and the population scale platforms are playing a huge role in opening new opportunities for disruption and innovation.
I think we are almost out of time, but
I'll just
quick.
add one small thing. I think it's already reaching the masses, as I said, from the India Stack, right? And actually, we probably are the first country which are creating such a digital infrastructure at scale, right? To give you an example, a lot of us have been to the US, right? The freeway, the expressways and the highway systems were built in the 1930s, correct? That was the public infrastructure that US created then. I see the digital infrastructure that India is creating today very similar to that 100 years later. But that's going to propel to the next level and reach the common man, right? To the last stage.
If we let the mechanical engineers do their part and programmer.
That's I said, yes.
Yes.
On that note, since we were already running late, guys, want to wrap it up. Thank you for being such a nice audience. I hope you took a couple or maybe more learnings out of this when you go back. I did learn a lot, and so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There you go.
For more interesting content, like, comment and subscribe to our NASSCOM YouTube channel.